Good evening, everybody. Today is Wednesday, April 16th, 2025. It is 6:01 p.m. We do have a quorum present, so I'd like to call to order this regularly scheduled meeting of the Board of Commissioners of the Chittenden Solid Waste District. The meeting was properly warned and meeting packet was sent out to all commissioners and any interested parties who requested it. The first item on the agenda is the agenda. If any requests for changes or additions to the agenda. Hearing none, we will then follow the agenda as presented in the board packet. Item number 2 on the agenda is a public comment period. Are there any members of the public present in person, via Zoom or via telephone, who wish to address the Board of Commissioners about any particular topic other than those that I'd recommend waiting on for? If you have comments about any other items on the agenda, you could hold off on that until those items are presented to the board. There are no members of the public present in the conference room here at the offices of the district, and I'm aware of nobody via Zoom.
There are 2 members of the public attending Zoom.
Thank you.
Joe Sinagra.
If you wish to address us, now would be the time, again, unless it has to do with a topic that is appearing later on our agenda. Hearing no one, then I will close the public comment period. Next item on the agenda, item 3, is the consent agenda consisting of the minutes of the March 26, 2025 board meeting, program update memos, the executive director update, and the finance report consisting of the warrants, cash investments, and reserve balances. Any requests for an item in the consent agenda to be removed?
I have a question regarding program updates.
Okay, we'll pull that from, we'll remove program updates from the consent agenda. Any other requests? Bryn, yes, your hand is up.
If we can remove the meeting minutes, I'll have to abstain from that.
Okay,
Since I can vote on everything else, but I can't vote on the minutes since I wasn't here in March.
well, we're going to remove program updates, is that correct?
Yeah.
Yes, and if there is no request to remove the minutes, then they'll be accepted as presented in the packet.
I thought Brian was just requesting to remove the minutes from consent
I'm
agenda
sorry.
so that you could vote specifically on.
Okay, I'm sorry, I missed that. So we'll remove both the minutes and program updates. Hearing no other requests, then the consent agenda items of the executive director update and the finance report will be accepted as presented. We will first go to the minutes, since that appears first in the packet. Bryn, you had a question on the minutes?
I don't have a question. I have to abstain from voting because I wasn't here in March.
Same here.
Okay, that will be noted.
So you just need a motion to accept the minutes.
We did have a couple of other changes from Rick that he sent that were sent earlier, so I'll make those adjustments. They were minor.
So there were minor changes, corrections for clarity's sake that were in the minutes.
Will we approve the minutes?
Second separately.
Thank you. It's been moved and seconded that with the minutes of the March 26, 2025 meeting be approved. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, say nay. Abstentions?
Abstain.
We have 2 abstentions. Minutes are approved. And then questions on program updates.
Yes, one question, and I believe it's for Jen here. So I noticed this potential bill in the House to ban any PFAS containing materials from either land application or landfill, from what I gathered in your. So I was curious, what are they proposing to be done with any material like the biosolids that would have that? Because is there another way to dispose of these, or is it just misguided?
So that is what is being discussed, and there is no other alternatives for disposal. So there's a lot of conversation about there's no place to put biosolids.
And you can't stop it,
right,
so.
right, yeah.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
So it sounded like from what you wrote, that it did not make crossover, so it
It
wouldn't.
has not made
wouldn't-
crossover. If it, if it continues to be discussed, I'm sure there'll be a significant amount of change that happens before it gets over to the Senate.
Okay, thank you, that was my main, it just made no sense to me, I was like, well, okay, thank you.
Motion to accept the program. Any other questions on program updates? Will I entertain a motion then to accept the program updates as presented in the packet?
So move, Seth Burlington.
Second.
Thank you, it's been moved and seconded. Any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor of accepting the program updates, please say aye.
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 Any opposed, say nay. Any abstentions? Program updates are accepted. We're now moving on to item number 4, the solid waste management ordinance. And I do believe we have members of the public here present who would likely want to speak to that. Just by way of information, I'll first ask the executive director and perhaps staff, if she so designates, to make a presentation, give an opportunity to commissioners to ask any questions or make any observations, and then open it up for questions from the public. And then we will go from there. But I just wanted to acknowledge that we do have members of the public, and definitely the board would like to hear from them and their perspective on this issue. So with that preamble concluded, I'll turn it over to the executive director.
Thank you very much. As the board may recall, on the last full board meeting on March 26th, we had a fairly lengthy discussion about the solid waste management fee and its relation to an increase, since we just did increase it last year, and how it's my sense and the sense of staff that another increase, rather sizable, is warranted at this time in order to help us to bridge a funding gap for the new materials recycling facility project. We discussed it for about an hour, so it was a rather lengthy discussion and debate, and it was fairly engaging. And I, at that point, told the board that I would bring back some suggested proposed language. There was no language proposal at that point. It was merely discussing the my rationale for bringing this change at this time. And if you are able to bring up the chart that we had the last time. Yeah, that would be great to show again, just to remind folks and for members of the public. So really the basis for why 40 is this chart here. And so traditionally we have over the years, and this is showing about 22 years of progression. And over the years, you can see it's that orange line is where we had our solid waste management fee. An increase is where we would bump it up at one point, and then it would hold steady for a number of years, bump it up again, it would hold steady, and then bumped it up. And so you can see that we've only made 3 increases over the past 22 years. The first one in 2009, then 2013, and then again last year. It was $5, $5, $3. And sometimes it has kept pace with inflation. Those are the dashed and the dotted lines. The dashed line is general CPI, and so you can see that before we had that increase in 2009, we were not keeping pace with the cost of living with the consumer price index. And then we bumped it up and we met that CPI, and then we pretty quickly fell below. And then we raised it and we were above the CPI for a number of years, and then we met it again in 2021 and then fell behind. So that is the dashed line in the middle. The dotted line is the garbage and trash consumer price index. And that is the index that is generally used for folks in our industry. And you can see that there was one time between 2015 and 2016 where our solid waste management fee, really between 2015 and 17, also met the garbage and trash index, which is basically the cost of doing business in general for the garbage and trash industry. And recycling and composting is included in that. we very quickly fell behind that industry index as well. So when I actually had asked John Dort and John Valparta to track over the past couple of decades where our solid waste management fee would be, or could be, had we kept pace with the general CPI for the Northeast BC class, which is what we use to determine our COLA recommendation, and for the garbage and trash index. And when they plotted those numbers, this is what that chart shows, is that had we been utilizing the garbage and trash index CPI for the past 22 years, that number would be at about $39.21. So the justification for 40 meets that, in my mind, that 2025 estimate, and that is just kind of this was as of about a month ago. So likely to change over the next couple of months, but we would land at an even 40. And that brings our solid waste management fee, should the board agree to the ordinance change, to where the cost is for our industry. And that is the rationale for why 40. Additionally, we do need some additional funds to meet the increasing costs for the materials recycling facility project. I presented that to the board last month as well, and said we were likely to be about $3.5 to $4 million short, given the latest estimate from our construction partner. We met with them this week, and their estimates have not varied widely from about a month and a half ago, which is good. So that it's good and it's bad. It means we're still about $3 to $3.5 million short on the cash we would need. It is now my recommendation that we go out for another bond. I do not want to incur additional long-term indebtedness. I do not want to ask the voters to incur that indebtedness. We did look at increasing other fees. We looked at increasing the materials recycling facility tip fee, the current fee, to realize a similar revenue number. We would have to increase the MRF tip fee by $25 to $30 a ton. At that $30 a ton, 30 to 35, that would put us wildly out of market range for the MRFs, and we would certainly run the risk of losing tons down to Rutland, with our tip fee being $120, $125 a ton. The Rutland tip fee is around $100. And we saw this in the reverse. When our tip fee was significantly below Rutland's several years ago, we were receiving tons up from as far away as Bennington County. So we know that haulers have a choice in where they bring their recycling tons. So we felt that was not a viable option at this time. Another suggestion was to raise fees at the drop-off centers. The drop-off center customers represent about 27% of the Chittenden County residents utilize our drop-off centers, so that would be an outsized unfair burden on 27% of the users of the facilities. So we would have to, again, increase our fees dramatically to realize that additional revenue. A per capita fee was floated as well, and we would have needed to have alerted our member towns and cities back in December, by December 1, if we were intending to assess either an assessment or a per capita fee. And again, that hits property owners, not necessarily all generators of waste. For example, all tons generated for disposal also wrap in visitors. They wrap in fairs, festivals, any trash that is generated in Chittenden County that is destined for landfill or for disposal is assessed the solid waste management fee. So it would not capture those tons. It would be an unfair burden on property owners. So the most fair approach, in my mind, was to utilize the solid waste management fee as it does touch every fee destined for disposal. So that way the additional fee is spread out across all generators in the county in a fair and equitable manner. So that's just a recap of the rationale that we discussed at last month's meeting. It's also briefly again discussed at the Finance Committee meeting, although the Finance Committee and the Exec Board were looking at proposed language, which is presented in the packet tonight. At the Exec Board meeting on Monday, our attorney did have a couple of recommendations that were discussed. So instead of sending out a new version of the changes, I thought that might be confusing. I thought we could simply address the proposed changes here tonight and have another discussion. So if we're looking at the proposed language changes that begins on page 3, I think it is page 3. No, this is item number 4. I'm not sure where it is actually in the packet.
Item number 4 begins on page 26.
Thank you, on page 26. So the key, the red underline is new language or new numbering, strike through is deleted language, green double strike through and green double underline just means that that language is moved from an existing section into a new section. So one of the things we realized when we were going through this too was that we did not have a definition of tipping fees. So we are adding a definition of tipping fees. So you see that in Article 2 definitions. We have run through the alphabet again. So we're at ZZ, tipping fees. And we made that fairly generic because we do talk about tipping fees elsewhere in the ordinance and wanted to make sure that it captured everything that it could relate to. And then we move down to Article 8, solid waste management fee. And here in 8.1 establishment, I added the reference to the district's charter to provide more reference for why we are able to create and establish a fee. So it is just referencing that Article 1 creation and powers. And then the second half of that existing paragraph, that language that refers to exemptions is simply moved into a new standalone section 8.2. So now the first 8.1 will strictly talk about what the fee is, the establishment of it, and then anything that is an exemption is moved down to its new section 8.2. And that is, there was a change, an addition to that section, which should actually be in red. The last sentence of that section is just referring to the fact that the board may exempt or partially exempt other materials from the imposition of the solid waste management fee upon good cause shown. So it talks about all the exemptions, and then if the board is petitioned with a different material that is not specifically listed, you may consider that as well. There's a new section 8.3 called purpose and uses. And this is to clarify what the fee may be used for. We had never had that clarification before. So this lists out items that may include but are not limited to. So specifying debt service, principal and interest, capital reserves, any portion of costs of operation not defrayed by tipping fees, special waste programs, recycling programs, educational programs, administrative costs, other facilities, programs and service costs. So just being specific that it can be used for these purposes. This is where one of the changes suggested by our attorney exists in the highlighted sentence, by the sale of goods by grants received by the district or by other revenue due to the district. Thomas is suggesting that we remove the reference to grants because grant revenue tends to be very specific to an item or to a program. For example, we received a grant from the Agency of Natural Resources for the MRF project. So that is not considered general revenue, it is restricted to that project. We may receive a grant for a piece of equipment that is specific to that equipment and cannot be seen as revenue, unrestricted revenue. So I do agree that that makes sense to remove grants from that listing of potential revenue to be utilized before dipping into solid waste management fees. So that is the new section 8.3. Section 8.4 is the amount of fee. So the current language says the solid waste management fee is $30 per ton, and then that is the extent of the language. This new section, or this extension of this section, adds the language to discuss and determine how the board shall determine any adjustments to the fee. So this is introducing the mechanism to do that, and the recommendation is to utilize the annual budget process to do so. And part of the rationale for this is actually to provide significantly more access to the public and opportunities for the public to comment on the changes. In a general ordinance fee change process, there is maybe 2 opportunities for public comment from the public through the budget process. There is the initial proposed budget presented to the board in November. There is a public hearing that must be held before January 31st. There is a finance committee meeting that for the past 2 years has been in February. There's a board meeting generally held in March that is accepting the budget. So there are 4 built into our processes alone for opportunities for public input and comment. And then the public may also comment at their own select board and city council meetings on anything in our budget, on our budget in general or any particular item. So there are multiple opportunities over many months for the public to be involved in this part of the process. And so here we also, in this language, are saying that the board will consider or shall consider the purposes and uses. So when they're looking at an adjustment, it may not necessarily be an increase, it can be a decrease. So the board will look at the purposes and uses as referenced in the prior section, and also shall look at the consumer price index for the Northeast BC class, urban class, and for the garbage and trash index. Both indexes are created by the US Bureau of Labor Statistics, and they are generated on a monthly basis, on a rolling 12-month, but you can also just isolate the 12-month. And we are saying to reference the previous 12-month period, so grabbing that rolling average. Another change here too, and this was discussed at the exec board meeting on Monday, was because we have to have a hearing on the budget not later than January 31st, if we are not deciding on the adjustment until January 31st, that doesn't give the public the opportunity to talk about what we are actually going to be proposing to the board. So we think that we should have the whatever's going to be available to the public and have their conversation be heard at the hearing before the CPI as it is on December 31, which we would know for between January 10th and 20th. So we generally hold the hearing at the January board meeting, so that would be the 4th Wednesday of the month. So if the CPI is completed and is out by that second week of January, that's the number that would be proposed for the adjustment. We also want to have, it was suggested in here that we have something that, and this is again was Thomas's suggestion, that we also make sure that it is clear that the board does have the ability, the authority to change that recommendation through the budget process. So if the staff is proposing 2% and the board hears comment on 2%, and then they feel that the adjustment needs to be 3%, that the board shall have the authority to make that adjustment. One of the things also discussed at the executive board meeting was, and this language at the very end of the paragraph, in the event of an unanticipated extraordinary circumstance, that language was added after discussion at the finance committee meeting and at the executive board meeting. We discussed and thought that that introduces too much uncertainty for the public and for the hauling community if the board can at any time during the year determine that a fee needs to be changed. So in order to provide stability and say, once the board accepts the budget and is transmitted to the cities and towns, that is what the hauling community can expect will take effect on July 1. So for the full next fiscal year, so to provide some stability. So the recommendation for the discussion was to not include that extraordinary circumstances language. And the rationale for that was we have multiple levers at the district level to, if there's some kind of a catastrophic event where we can either, depending if it's a facility related incident, if there's a tipping fee associated with that facility, we can look to increase that tipping fees only. If it is something that is truly catastrophic and we need to, temporarily close facilities or do something else that is dire, if we need to pull from reserves, we have that ability to do that at any time during the year. But changing the solid waste management fee should be just through the budget process over the course of that normal process throughout our year. And then the next two sections, the language did not change from the existing language, just it's just a new section number, so a new 8.5 and a new 8.6. That was a lot of information, so I will pause.
Okay. Bryn, your hand is up.
Thanks. Forgive me, I probably missed conversation from last month. What would this look like as far as impact to like the downstream impact? Is there any estimate on what that might be for price increases for like municipalities, for businesses? I know you can't give a firm amount because it depends on the hauler, but is there any forecast on an estimate?
It does depend on the hauler. It also depends on your waste generation in general and how much folks can control their overall waste generation. For example, to be able to kind of decrease your impact perhaps like on a household basis, you could look to, for example, if you are currently a curbside subscriber and you are receiving services weekly, you could look at, can we manage our waste better, maybe recycle more, maybe we compost if we haven't started composting already. Can we, reduce our bill to twice a month instead of 4 times a month? Can we go to once a month service if our hauler provides that? That would reduce your personal household impact to any increases. We looked at the increase kind of per ton and for generation across the tons. And Jen, I think you had initially done some of that.
Yeah, per household, we're looking at a little bit over a ton of trash, so.
For a year.
Per year.
Per year, 1 ton of trash per year. So if you're looking at 1 ton, in general, that's how much folks tend to generate. The additional impact would be that potentially $10.
Yeah, somewhere between.
So over the course of the year, so that's for household, again, for
I want to jump in.
businesses.
We had a
Sure.
discussion about drop-off center pricing. Would this increase impact the pricing of at drop-off centers?
Right. Because we do pay that too. So, the solid waste management fee is embedded in what we pay Casella as part of our materials management bills. And so we do embed that in the cost of our bags. We are increasing the cost of the small bag this year. So, we'll certainly be monitoring that closely to see the impact, but everything is kind of wrapped into the cost of the bag, the recycling, organics.
And when I raised
trash.
this issue in a previous meeting, the answer was that there's no anticipated change in the bag pricing
Just that
at the
one.
drop-off center.
Yeah, just the one.
So, except for the one bag, which is also mentioned in the packet in the budget portion of this.
Mhm.
And there are reasons for changing that price outside of the solid waste management, proposed increase to the solid waste management fee.
Right.
So I think, Bryn, just to your question, has been looked at in a number of different ways, different angles, at the typical homeowner level. I wanted to go to, I'm sorry, Katie was up, Margie, and then we'll go to you.
Thank you. A couple of things. First of all, it sounds, kind of silly. To me, it's the more people recycle and take away from the waste stream, the less money we get in tip fees. So it's like the better we do with recycling, the more money it's going to cost for trash, which I guess, it makes sense. In theory, we're selling more recycling at the MRF to recoup those costs. That's just always been a kind of like weird circle that we go in here. But my question is, I live in Westford, and my town pays for trash and recycling through Myers Container, and we have a budget and a contract with them. I'm wondering, a 33% increase significantly impacts the budget for my town and our waste services. So it also sounds to me like if there's a catastrophic event, like the MRF needs another couple $1 million, then outside of the annual budget period, the board can decide to make changes to the tip fee. It just sounds like there's a lot of moving parts to this that are, have a significant effect on haulers. And, what am I going to do with my select board? Tell them that, we have to change the contract pricing. Anyway, that's just my question. And just another point of it was, I was wondering if CSWD explored cost-cutting options from the budget and possibly spreading out the potential increase of the tip fee across maybe programs, so it's not just whatever income we're getting from other things. I know it's difficult to spread it out. I mean, could we spread it out so it's not just coming out of one big bucket at a time? I know that's a lot, and I just kind of like threw it all out there, but answer at will, I guess.
Thank you. So yes, we absolutely did look at the cost cutting, and and thank you for bringing that up, Katie. One of the things that we are doing is we are deferring pretty much most of our other capital projects to the out years and looking at critical needs only for this next year. So for example, one of the projects that we have had in our capital plan that had been budgeted in prior years, just last year and the year before, was completely renovating the Milton Drop-Off Center. And that was an $800,000 project. And that will get moved to out years. We simply can't afford that $800,000 right now. There are some equipment pieces that, Josh and I went over this the other day, that we likely can't get, because we've established a regular replacement schedule for equipment, which is the right thing to do, so that we're not finding ourselves in a position of having to have things break all the time, spending lots of money on unnecessary repairs, out of warranty, leasing, and getting on a regular replacement schedule. We are going to be pushing some of those out where we can. So we're looking at really decreasing our capital spending. So that was the first thing that we were looking at, to kind of capture some of those dollars that had been previously designated for capital projects where the projects hadn't begun, but they were, an accounting thing. They had been tagged as unavailable in the capital reserve because they had been a work in progress. Those are being pushed out. So that's one way to look back at the capital reserve and say, okay, we thought we had X dollars because these other projects were in progress. They are no longer going to be in progress. They're going to be either deferred or delayed or not done, not needed. Bring more of that money back into the capital reserve. So we looked first there, how much of the capital projects that are in progress are necessary and what can be moved. And as far as kind of spreading out the cost, we did take a second pass at our budget after we met with the Finance Committee in February. And we made adjustments to both expenses and to revenue. We're always conservative on our revenue estimates, and we tried to right-size that a bit. And we also paid particular attention to looking at our actuals for last year, and again, making those lines a little bit closer to what do we reasonably expect versus fluff. There was concern because there is, you know, a certain amount of uncertainty around many of our, not many, but some of our items due to the tariffs. So for example, we've already received a letter from our peat moss supplier. We know Dan's costs are going up, so we did not remove those costs increases. That's happening. But for other things, we looked at that pretty closely and made some assumptions based on that. But we did take a good amount of cost out of the budget that you have before you, which is why when you're looking at that budget, it's pretty darn close to zero. We're just showing a very small amount going into the general reserve. So yes, and your first point is right. We are ideally in an upside down business. We want to decrease our main source of revenue. And you know, again, it's always management fee is not our main source of revenue. It's about 25%, 24% of what we take in. But yes, that remains our goal. And so, and yet we have this infrastructure that we do need to support and continue to support. And it is, you know, what we're doing is a public good. And we need to make sure that we're continuing to maintain these services that the public has invested in for the public good. And that was a long answer to your question. We'll
Noted. Marty, your hand has been up, then we'll go to Leslie, and then we'll see if there are other commissioners and Bryn as well.
Okay, so I have two questions. The first one is really a nit, but I'm looking at this definition and I'm wondering whether it needs to say capital S solid waste. It seems like that's a defined term somewhere and it's only referred to as waste in that definition, but you know better than I. The second question is, I think a couple of months ago, we had a long discussion about the 25% reduction and its applicability to, in that case, it was asphalt shingles. And there was some, I'm not sure I totally understood how it interacted with the ordinance, but I thought there was some discussion about whether the ordinance definitions were consistent with the request that was being made, and I'm wondering whether this does anything to resolve that.
It does not.
Okay.
You're good, Marty?
I'm good.
Okay, thanks. Leslie?
So I had a question with respect to your estimate of the impact of this on households that have curbside service, because curbside service is typically billed by the hauler on a volume basis, not on a weight basis. And since there's no price regulation, there's, you know, it's a purely competitive environment amongst the pricing by the haulers. How do we know what the impact is really gonna be?
We can only estimate based on the tons generated. And you're right, it is a volume. We struggle with this with our drop-off
Well,
centers.
I know, yeah.
Right, because we price by volume and not by weight. So I don't know how the haulers decide how much they need to charge per cart. I don't have that insight. So when we're saying the average household that creates X amount based on a ton, this is how much we feel they would be impacted. However, your point is valid. We don't know.
And I have one small, very small nit, just to, in the proposed language in 8.3, in the middle of that, you used the term district fee rather than solid waste management fee. At the same time, you're talking about tipping fees. I think that needs some clarification. You might wanna just put in solid waste management fee,
Yes.
because it was confusing to me.
You're correct.
Bryn, your hand is up, then we'll go to Paul Stabler.
Thanks. I have a question and follow up with a statement. First is, the ordinance language says it'll be based on the US Bureau of Labor Statistics. Was there any consideration if that data is not available or not reliable or updated?
Yes, it was mentioned, we did not have an alternative, maybe because it's hard to fathom that the Bureau of Labor Statistics could go away, but you are correct. It's one of
That's
the
unfathomable right now.
Correct, it's one of those unknowns. And so that's a very good question. And maybe we could always say, instead of saying shall consider, we could go to the lighter may consider. It's not as, definitive, but that could give some room for the board to consider something else. We liked being more specific because then that is something that anyone can point to. But you're very, very spot on to say if this no longer exists, what is an alternative source of something similar? I'm not sure if the state does anything similar, like or if
Yeah,
they're-
I don't personally know. I would, in this circumstance, I would advocate for May, just because there's so many unknowns in the
Yeah.
world right now. Otherwise, I would wholeheartedly agree with shall. I don't want to lock us in and then we're not able to make changes because of that.
Right, because there's no longer a bureau, right?
Well, could you insert language that says, or other appropriate index?
Thomas, thoughts?
It's hard to predict what will happen with the current administration in terms of what government services will still be around, but I think it could be just a parenthetical after where it references the Bureau of Labor Statistics, both the BC Consumer Price Index and the Garbage and Trash Index, and then a parenthetical or reasonable equivalent. So that the board can see if there is something that, if that doesn't apply, there may be some other state service or private service that is.
So we retain some flexibility without having to try to address every conceivable or inconceivable contingency in these
So
fraught times.
keep shall and then add the parenthetical or reasonable equivalent.
And then I just wanted to make as a general statement that, Sarah, you know that this is a public good, which I wholeheartedly agree that the MRF is public good. Unlike some other states, Vermont does not regulate waste management as a public utility. So it does not have the oversight of the Public Service Department or the PUC. And likely because of that, we don't have the data insights for haulers the way we would with other utilities that we see. So some data restrictions there on making fully informed decisions, which I'm always a fan of. So just wanted to put that out there.
Thank you.
Thanks, Bryn. Paul Stabler.
Yeah, just a couple of points, and this is a repeat of what I said last month, but I think it's worth keeping in mind that prior to the building of the MRF back in, 2000-ish timeframe.
93.
93, oh, 93. Well, anyway, I'm getting way older than I want to be. But anyway, the solid waste management fee was our primary source of income. So, it was only when we built the MRF that we had that stream come in and we, benefited from that. The other thing about the National Labor Relation, or no, sorry, the Bureau there, the index, I think we had a good discussion at the Finance Committee in that does not tie our hands to use that because, the board may find other reasons to either decrease it or increase it beyond that. And we didn't want to tie that in. So I think that keeps in mind if that metric goes away for a short time, then we'd still be able to operate, I think, my guess. So, anyway.
So I see the Keltons posted a comment, if we could read that out and see if you were prepared to respond to that.
Sure. Do we anticipate changing an in-district and out-of-district fee at the MRF as Chittenden County residents' businesses are paying this increased fee on their trash when everyone will be benefiting from the new facility? So by way of some background for newer members to the board, we have had, in the past, we've had set up a two-tier system. We had a price for what was it called, in-district tons, and that was one tip fee at the MRF, and then we had a different fee for out-of-district tons. And it didn't used to be much difference. Jen, I don't know if you remember or recall at the time. It was pretty minimal, and then at one point it became a sizable difference. And we actually got some pushback from haulers outside of the district who were utilizing our facility because it was much more convenient, say for folks up certainly in the Montpelier region and out on the islands than to go down all the way down to Rutland. And so because at that point in the MRF's existence, it no longer really made a difference financially. Like we weren't relying on extra out-of-district tons, dollars, so we made them the same. And we did briefly have an in-district, out-of-district differential a few years ago when we were increasing, I think we had increased the MRF tip fee twice or three times in 1 year. And we kept the in-district tip fee and raised the out-of-district, mostly in deference to and in understanding of both Westford and Burlington, who could not adjust their rates that they were charging their residents as quickly as we needed to adjust our tip fee. So at that point, we had the differential again. It was maybe $10, I think, a ton at that point. And then for July 1, we then did go back to everyone was paying the same thing again. Folks who've been around a bit, I don't know if there's any additional incomes reason. So Kelton, I'm not sure if that's, so to answer the question directly, no, we're not anticipating changing, going back to an in-district, out-of-district. It certainly is something we could consider. We would not be able to, though, again, charge all of that, because we would never be able to recover it. Most of the tons that we process are Chittenden County tons. The overwhelming majority are Chittenden County tons. So again, like that differential would need to be so significant that we would then lose the out-of-district tons down to Rutland.
But this is really the tip fee at the MRF right now is on the table and not the solid waste management fee, which
Right, and I think that's,
clearly addresses
and
waste.
that's what he's,
Okay,
yeah, he's referring specifically to the MRF tip fee. So it just, from a market perspective, it would not work.
Paul, can I speak?
yes.
I just want to say for the record, because I was going off the top of my head and I want for the record, the increase in the solid waste management fee is more close to about $15 per household than
Per
10.
year.
Yeah, per year, than 10, yeah.
Thank you. So we've had an opportunity for commissioners to ask questions, and as earlier I mentioned that I know we have members of the public here. Joe Sinagra from Casella is, no?
Myers.
I'm sorry. Joe, give you the opportunity to address the board with your Any questions or comments?
Yeah, I mean, thank you. Maybe I can answer Katie's question about Westford, because we do have strong data from Westford. On average, we're picking up approximately 70 tons, during the pickup. So with this increase, Westford's going to see an increase of $7,274 in a new added fee that we're going to have to go back and ask them to contribute. Secondly, we as all haulers, take price increases seriously. And unfortunately, we recently had a price increase because of the cost, as you guys pointed out, of just doing business. If this passes, we're going to be forced to pass along this increase to our customers. And since we just did an increase, we're going to have to put that as a line item on the bill. Sarah mentioned $10 a year. So that might be a little conservative, but so we're looking at maybe $1 increase per residential customer in the district. And we're just going to have that as a line item on the bottom of the bill. And, we'll communicate to our customers that it was from the CSWD, and we'll include the notes, minutes from the meeting if this passes. I just think we just have to look at, you're talking about a 33% increase, and I understand you have to have an increase, but how about we phase this in over 2, 3, 4, 5 years? Jumping. I mean, there is no business as a for-profit business we can operate. If we went to our customers and said, we're going to raise your rates 33%, we wouldn't be in business tomorrow. So I just think we really have to look at the impact this is truly going to have on the thousands of customers.
I guess I'd ask if you could provide a little bit more context, Joe. You've mentioned a dollar figure of $7,000 for Westford, yes.
For Westford.
But in the context of the overall cost that Westford has to bear this, on a percentage basis from what you're charging, and the implication that by raising the solid waste management fee by 33% would equate to a total increase of what you charge the town of Westford be 33%.
No, their increase would be about 4%.
Right.
So their overall. Well, sure, but and Katie can probably speak.
Understanding the context of what the increase, the impact would be for the town of Westford and potentially any other.
Sure, but if every aspect of the business increased by 33%, so if you're raising our fees 33%, if RL Valley raised our negotiated diesel rate by 33%, we have to take all the aspects of business go in. So I feel if we're setting the precedence that one aspect of the business can increase 33%, I'm afraid we're going to see other aspects of the business follow suit with the district and raise their rates 33%. And a 4% increase to the town of Westford is a huge number for the town of Westford.
You raised another issue or a question about phasing this in, and I think that question had come up certainly at the finance committee. But why $10 now? Couldn't it start at $5 and gradually work its way up, or some other schedule? And I asked Sarah to address that.
Yeah, the construction schedule for the MRF is over the course of the next 12 to 15 months. So with the shortfall being 3.5 to 4 million, phasing that in over 3, 4, 5 years, I don't believe any of our vendors will accept delayed payment for services rendered. I can't imagine our design folks would wait to get paid until we generated enough cash to pay them, or the construction firm would say it's fine to phase in their fee. We need to pay for the services when they occur. And delaying this MRF, we've already incurred from the delay from last year when we weren't able to build on the site that we had originally intended to build on. That cost delay alone is about $1 million. So even by delaying, there's it doesn't make reasonable sense to do that. We need to build this facility now. The current facility is doing as well as it can, and it is doing what we need it to do, but it is also costing us significant dollars in both known repairs, and we have to plan for other replacements to cost of several hundreds of thousands of dollars in this year alone, and then budget for the same for next year. So we don't have the luxury of time, unfortunately, on this project to wait for phase-in. This is not something I love presenting. I would really rather not be needing to do this. But when we looked at all of our options and looked at the most fair option spread across all waste generators in the district, this is the option that will produce what we needed to produce and get us to this project finish line in the time frame that we needed to do so. Katie had a question.
Yep, Katie.
Hi, yeah, again, I'm sorry, it just sounds like the haulers and then the residents and whoever's getting this fee is basically paying because CSWD's budget process for the MRF like didn't work. Like we're paying for the, you're passing on the need and the rush to get this done and pay for these fees and do all this stuff. But like the budget for the MRF, like we talked about this, and now it's like a scramble because of all these, like, is it $3.5 or $4 million? Like that's not, that's a big jump there. I mean, I just feel like it's going to be hard for me to sell it to my, my friends and neighbors saying that, yeah, I'm sorry, we had this budget, but stuff happens. Now we're all going to pay more.
Well,
Now I know it's the short term. We're looking at the long-term effect. I'm just looking at it from strictly, I have to talk to people who don't have this background that we do.
Yeah.
And saying like, yeah, sorry, 4% increase, trash and recycling. Why? Because CSWD didn't budget correctly, and now we need to.
That's an unfortunate characterization of that, Katie. There are, again, we certainly did not control Mother Nature when the deluges happened over the couple of years that turned that lot into an emerging wetland. There was absolutely nothing we could have done about that. Could not anticipate that would become a wetland and could not fix it and did not want to build on a wetland. I mean, that was a decision that this board agreed with that I think was the right way to go from an environmental perspective. So
I'm just saying this is relatively new. Like this increase was it was brought forward in the last couple of months because of the shortfall of this $3.5 to $4 million. Is all I'm saying. I know I understand what goes on in the budget process, and I know what happened with the original property. I understand that you can't build on wetlands. We're moving past that. I'm just saying I'm trying to put this into terms that I can talk to people about and justify why this is going to be an increase that I have to maybe take back to my select board and figure out. And it's going to be an ordeal for people in my town. I know Westford's small. I'm just saying, these are conversations I'm having with people. Seriously, there is conversation about this. So I feel that I need to put it out there based on my conversations, and especially with Joe Sinagra's information about that 4%. It's going to be tough for me to sell that for sure.
And obviously, I will certainly be discussing this with the board too when I go and present our budget. One of the things we did not have in our budget for the original project was $3 million to purchase a new site. That was an unanticipated, unexpected expense, and yet it's necessary. So, right there's your difference. There's your delta. Yes, we were able to get a grant from Agency of Natural Resources, which certainly is going to help. But that delta of the 3 million plus having to delay 8-9 months is 1 million just in the delay, and that is general construction costs escalation for all projects. We are not unique nor alone in these projects having these kinds of increases over the past year. When we went to the voters in 2022, prices increased dramatically between 22 and 23 when we were designing and permitting, and then again between 23 and 24, increases again. And then with our delay of, again, needing to buy land and once we got here, increases yet again. There have been double digits increases in all construction projects over the past few years. So the fact that we're able to even kind of keep it where it is, and we're confident that with the numbers that we talked with REARC about on Tuesday, that they are committed to finding us some savings wherever we can. But the numbers I gave you as the latest update last month or the month before are holding, which is why I feel like we're in a good place with this increase to be able to keep it to the new estimate. And we'll have those hard numbers again in when they go back to we get the design set and then they go back out to bid to their subs. But that 3 million, we could not have anticipated that. And I think you would agree that was a surprise that last year we did not think we were going to need to.
And there's the other additional element of tariffs, which you haven't mentioned. Should this steel be sourced from Canada, has another potential
pressure, for sure.
Potential pressure. Lauren?
Yeah, that's actually relevant to my question. I'm curious, like, what happens if there are other significant increases in the construction process? We're really early on right now, and beyond steel, there's other increases happening in the market. So I'm curious, what other levers do we have?
Yeah, because it's a great question. So the steel is the big one, and so they would be sourcing potentially from the US and Canada. They're going to see which one is going to come in better. The other increases, there were not as many increases as they had anticipated. So when we had this last round of the initial estimate, they were fearful that there would be more. Steel was the big one because of the unknown. So that one represented about $400,000 difference between last year and this year. So that's a large chunk, mainly due to potential impact from tariffs. So, but the other increases were moderate. And so because now there's a short period between when they gave us the estimate to get initial without having the design set on Tuesday and when they will be getting their firm numbers in June, they feel pretty confident that there won't be any wild swings in that time. The wild card remains to be the tariffs. But it shouldn't be more than that 400,000 delta.
And so what happens if it is over that? What levers do we have beyond the solid waste management fee? Let's say this passes and we're still a shortfall.
So, right, so there's some value engineering levers that we will continue to attempt to pull. There's some, the size of the parking lot. There's some that reduces the amount of asphalt and fill and things. There's some insulation considerations. There are some things that can bring several $100,000 down. We're not going to shave millions off. That ship is unfortunately sailed. But if it's the difference between a few $100,000, we will likely be able to find that, which we're going to try to find it anyway.
Mm-hmm.
So they gave us their most conservative, high, upper end. This is where we think it's going to be. And we're going to try to keep coming down from there.
Okay, good.
So at this point, just want to bring us back to it. We've had a long discussion about the ordinance. The board action requested is to approve staff to initiate a public comment period. I'd entertain a motion to do that, and we still have conversation once that's been moved.
So moved, Jericho.
Thank you.
Second, South Burlington.
Thank you. It's been moved and seconded that we approve staff to initiate the public comment period. Could you just describe for us what that period, public comment period, or what the process would be like should we approve this motion?
I didn't see the motion.
Is there language in there?
Okay. I was not anticipating that motion, but it has now been moved and seconded.
Can I add lib something? The board authorizes the staff to begin a public comment period on the proposed revisions to the Chittenden Solid Waste District Ordinance. Would that do the job?
Oh, I'm sorry, yeah, sure, yes.
Okay.
If that is the intent of the board to initiate a public comment period.
You were not intending to
I
have,
was not.
we could enter,
That's
to
okay.
see if the motion could be withdrawn.
I think it is now out there, and I think the public here is in attendance would appreciate a public comment period. So what that does is, okay.
In danger. That would challenge the budget schedule, right?
So the budget as presented is, you do have it before you without the increase. So everything that has been set out is with the solid waste management fee as it is at $30. So if the board does approve the ordinance change after a public comment period, it would just push the effective date beyond July 1 for an increase. So
It isn't our, sorry, am I speaking out of turn?
No, go ahead.
Isn't our budget that you're about to present, doesn't that incorporate the $40?
No,
per-
she said no.
Does not?
it's shown in two ways. It's shown as if there, because I didn't want to assume that the board would approve this.
Yeah.
So what you'll see in the presentation is, if approved, this is where 100% of that increase would then go. So it would not touch the operating budget, it would go directly to a project reserve fund.
Sorry,
Thomas, you had to-
Thomas.
I just wanted to make a point for the board's consideration. Any amendment to the ordinance has a minimum 60 days before it can become effective. So at whatever point that the board adopts and enacts the changes to the ordinance, the effective date would have to be at least 60 days beyond that date, with a requirement for publication of notice of the changes. And it also gives an opportunity for a petition to bring the matter to a special meeting of the voters of the district. It's I think a 5% threshold of all the voters that would need to petition that.
Leslie?
Sarah, given that timing, does that have an impact on the revenue generated within the fiscal year that might change the calculations presented in terms of what goes to the, let's say, the MRF fund, if you want to call it that way? And since we don't have that data in front of us, there's a question of sufficiency or insufficiency. So this whole thing is kind of entangled in the challenge of trying to fund a long-term capital investment out of current revenue. So, just hypothetically, if I understood you saying that if the district, instead of trying to fund the deficiency out of current revenue, felt it was more appropriate to fund it out of some kind of borrowing, a mortgage on the property purchase. All right, this is just blue skying, right? That would have had to have been warned in December, that kind of decision cannot be made mid-year or mid-fiscal year or?
No, that would be tied to long-term indebtedness.
Right.
So any long-term indebtedness does need the permission of the voters. So it would be a special election to allow us is my
Well, I
reading.
understand that, but, you know, we're looking at two potentially very different cash streams.
Mhm.
And we haven't, at least I haven't seen this really spun out to look at it in the way that you would want to discuss it with voters or with the town of Westford or whomever. And it's making me feel like that's a piece of information one would want to see prior to making a decision on solid waste management fee increase, because it might, hypothetically, it might be the case that the alternative might be more desirable over a 3-year, 4-year cash flow projection, but I don't know that. I mean, it's also the case that we're looking at potential huge interest rate increases, you know, the Federal Reserve just came out this morning with that kind of statement, so, I mean.
We have looked in the past at zero interest municipal loans. There's a nonprofit that offers those. The payback was very short, unlike the bond, which we're paying back over 25 years, so the debt service is, you know, it's reasonable.
What was very short?
It was very short.
Well, what is very short?
What is very short?
How,
It was their payback is about 5 years.
5 years?
5 years. So if we were to take
But zero interest?
the 5 million over 5 years, to get the 5 million, we're paying it right back immediately, million, on top of what we're,
I thought the shortfall was 3 million.
I'm just saying, if we took out a $5 million, it was doing round numbers. If we did 3 years over, you know, it's 3 million over 5 years, it's still a lot of cash out, while we're also paying down some debt. We did analyze that years ago, we were looking at the revenue sufficiency.
And if we wanted to do a supplementary municipal bond, not a zero interest loan, I mean, these are all very different calculations, we're gonna have very different results, and we don't know what they are right now. You know what I'm saying?
I do.
I mean, what you're trying to do is a huge challenge.
The difference is between, it really is the long-term debt requirement and what we need to do in order to secure that long-term debt. Any long-term debt, and that's per our charter, we've got to go to the voters. And that is not inexpensive to do that campaign, to ask for the voters to approve that. Is it?
Are we complicating the issue? We have in the past raised the solid waste management fee without changing documents. And should we not worry about changing the document at this point in time and raise the solid waste management fee the same as we've done before and move forward with our project? I mean, I was totally, when Meyer said, you know, there's $7,000 increase in the bill that Westford's gonna pay. I mean, if we don't build this MRF, they're gonna be paying more than $7,000 to truck stuff to another MRF, because we aren't gonna be in operation, but we've raised the fee before. Why don't we use that process now instead of doing everything that we're doing to complicate the issue?
I would second Alan's statement there.
Well, to clarify, we did have to go through the ordinance change process regardless to change the fee before, because right now it is in the ordinance, solid waste management fee is $30, the fee is $30.
Okay.
So we definitely do need, regardless, we need to change the
Okay,
ordinance.
thank you.
And the motion to start the public comment period does or does not accomplish that, start that process?
It's just another part of a process if we want to incorporate a public comment, another public comment period. So we've had public comment opportunities, but not a formal public comment period.
And is that required in
It
our?
is not.
I'm confused. We have a motion on the table here. What I'm hearing, I think what I'm hearing is that it's an unnecessary step.
It is an unnecessary step. And
Can I
Thomas is
withdraw my
not.
second?
I'll withdraw the motion.
Okay, and I'll withdraw the second.
I thought it was a required step, that's,
It
okay.
is not.
Okay. It's been withdrawn, the maker and the seconder of the motion has been withdrawn. So where do
Sorry,
we stand?
just quick question,
sorry,
clarifying
go ahead.
question. Sorry, are we voting on the ordinance change then, or we're just talking about this and what's the action? If there's no motion for this, just curious.
The action was, and I apologize for not catching the confusion on the agenda, that is on me. The request was to have the board vote on the changes, the recommended language changes to the ordinance.
So not approve, so we're changing the ordinance. Your vote, you want board action requested, approve changes to ordinance, because that's very different from what we have in the agenda.
Correct. And
So-
I apologize, that is my fault for not catching that error. It should not say approve staff to initiate public comment period. Board action requested should state approve proposed ordinance language changes.
Okay.
I move we approve the proposed changes to the solid waste management ordinance. Get it on.
Second, Sherlock. Oh,
Thank you. It's been moved and seconded that refresh me the exact language.
To approve, Thomas, to me, I better.
I would say that the motion to approve the changes to the solid waste management ordinance as presented in the packet with the changes discussed and presented at this evening's meeting. Which is
So moved.
And you had seconded you?
yes.
Okay. I'm not going to repeat that if I'm hoping it's clear. Is there discussion on the motion? Hearing none, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Aye.
Opposed, say nay.
Nay.
Nay, Westford.
Do a roll call.
Goldston.
Need to do a roll call vote, given the fact that this is a hybrid meeting. And that is now a requirement, so if the secretary would call the roll.
Burlington,
Here.
Matt is,
Did Matt need to leave?
oh, she's
we know.
gone. Charlotte,
Aye.
Colchester,
Yes.
Essex,
Yes.
Essex Junction,
Aye.
Heinsberg,
Aye.
Huntington. That was yes.
Yes.
Thank you. Jericho,
Yes.
Milton. Here, Richmond, he was here and left. Shelburne,
Yes.
South Burlington,
Aye.
Underhill,
Aye.
Westford,
Nay.
Williston,
Nay.
and Winooski.
Abstain.
Motion passes, it's 23-3.
Thank you very much.
Thank you all.
And we're now ready to move on to item number 5 in the agenda, which is the FY26 budget. Have a glass of heaven, sip of water.
This is only water. I promise. This much I wish for something a little stronger. Okay, so, Amy, if you could share. Thank you very much. Okay, next slide, please. We will try to move very quickly through here.
For a second, so I can do the recording.
And we want to start with our
Yes.
mission statement,
So there's a-
so for
Yes.
folks tuning
So
in
we
at a later date, here is what we're all about. We all know what next one here.
That door open, get some air in here.
Our financials are centered around these two statements, our income statement and our balance sheet. So these are what we use throughout the year to determine our relative fitness and financial soundness. Next, please. And this is the overview of the budget. As you can see, it is pretty close to net zero, and this was a little different from what the finance committee saw and gave input in, so we took their input and then went back and fine-tuned the budget. And it was resulting in revenue of 16.2 million. The cost of sales, you'll see, has increased from last year. Gross profit just over 16, total expense just under 16, basically getting us down to just about zero. Next, please. And so this is kind of where our income comes from. And you can see that the majority of our income is still being generated through our tipping fees. Sale of materials and solid waste management fee round out the top three sources of revenue. And sale of materials fluctuates according to mainly the MRF ACR, the average commodity revenue. It has been strong for the past 2 quarters, but that is solely dependent on what's happening outside of our control. Next, please. And there you go. And these are our expenses. And materials management tends to continue to be the largest expense that we have, and that is basically our hauling. Haulers who collect material for us in transportation, just moving materials from our facilities out to the world or out to disposal. Payroll expenses coming in is the second highest expense. And a basic comparison between last year's budget, this year's budget. And so the last line is the most confusing one. That is just showing that swing between where we were last year anticipating needed to draw down from reserves to this year looking to contributing to it. But you can see that the main increase there is in that cost of goods sold, even though it's a small line item in comparison to the rest of the budget. Percentage-wise, it's the largest one, but otherwise, the revenue is up slightly, the gross profit up slightly, expenses down slightly. So pretty much status quo.
I'm sorry, just to interrupt again for the benefit of commissioners. That revenue line is based on the $30 per ton?
Correct. So this is everything that you're seeing as far as the entire presentation until we get to literally the last 2 slides is based on that $30 a ton of solid waste management revenue.
Thank you.
You're welcome. And so, let's see. Dan, could you pop back up to operating departments? Okay. So the operating departments, those are our facilities. So MRF, ORF, DOCs, depot, maintenance, it's actually a little bit in there, no support. This is their budgets, and again, revenue up a little bit, expenses down a little bit. So good work there for the operating guys. Next, please. And the next few slides we'll go through fairly quickly. It's just a narrative description of what you've seen in your packet. Ops administration is the umbrella for basically for Josh, for Brian, and for Kaylee, who kind of have responsibilities over the entire operations. Next, please. The MRF, you can see there, income 5.67, expenses 4.17. So everything that is in excess of the revenue in excess of expenses for this facility is going into the capital reserve as it has for the past 20 years. And you can, again, we're looking to keep our tip fee at $90 a ton. The market range is between $90 and $110 a ton. And we did increase our anticipated revenue from the commodity sales, still conservative at $97 a ton budgeted. This last month it was at about $131 a ton. This is the depot. You can see their income at $386. That good chunk of that is a grant. This solid waste implementation plan grant from the state is about a third of that. Next, please. The organics recycling facility is about 1.1 million in their gross, so they're the ones that have the most of the COGS, the cost of goods sold, expenses at about 1.24. And that's where you can see we're making note of the COGS increase due to tariffs and increasing our trash disposal costs. We are anticipating increasing sales. We've increased our pricing on our products. The decrease in water costs, that is, fully realizing the decrease in expenses from bringing the water line down to the end of the road. Next, please. Drop-off centers, 3.3 in income, 3.1 in expenses. And the net is going to their operating reserve. There's only one increase to the small bag fee from $3 for a 13-gallon to $4 for an 18-gallon. So we're increasing the volume allowed in that small bag as well, and increasing our mattress charges due to our increased cost from our vendor. Maintenance and roll-off is for the first time seeing some small income. That is due to our new organics hauling pilot program. So a small amount of that is offset by some expenses, about $35,000 in expenses, and then the general rest of their expenses are the $777. Wages and benefits, overall a 3.2% increase against last year. There is an error in the memo. It says 57.1 FTEs, it's actually 56.23, so it's a slight decrease in our full-time equivalents from last year. So, but that is the correct number, 56.23. And also I had copied over the last year's COLA. It should be a slight increase to 3.06 from 3.03. Property management, there is now a known income from property management because we sold the property that to the city of Burlington that included our rental income there. And then there's a small amount of expenses for that budget for the remaining properties that we have. Biosolids is a pass-through. Next, please. Closed landfill, that little bit of income is from our treasury bond investments. So we invest a portion of that reserve into the T-bills. And so we're anticipating some more revenue from there as well. Expenses are due to needing to hire some consultants to help us understand better where the leachate, what the leachate situation looks like. We're looking at the cap. We're looking at some of our other areas around the seal of the landfill, and we anticipate needing to do some work in the coming year. That revenue, the expenses are paid out of that reserve. In the administrative departments, which are admin, finance, compliance, outreach and communication, these are your comparisons. Again, we're pretty much flat from last year. And so again, this is it says the $30 a ton. So this is the anticipated income from the solid waste management fee. And then I mentioned here in that bullet, if approved, so now it's approved, that additional $10 per ton will go directly to the Moat Capital Project Fund. So this 4.4 is reflective only of the $30 a ton, and that $30 covers what is needed for all of the administrative functions. And the small changes, we've removed some budgeted software developer and added HR coordinator. Compliance, we have increased our legal services. We're anticipating some additional enforcement actions and went from 1.5 full-time equivalent to 2.
Of course.
Finance, the increased to interest revenue, right, so that is increased revenue, and we decreased our costs for the accounting software. John negotiated a great deal for us, so that reduced about $40,000, almost $30,000 off that cost. Next, please. O&C, we decreased our staffing by 1 person, and we increased to consulting services. That bulk of that is for hiring, the board approved us hiring a marketing and advertising firm, and it's essentially the same costs that it would have been for the FTE, so those costs are a wash. Questions so far? Yes.
Are we forecasting any volume increases for that, like, renewed outreach campaign or the marketing support?
Are we forecasting increased tons?
Like, for example, if it's a successful campaign,
Oh,
I would
to
assume
tie
there would be
to-
additional folks coming to the drop-off centers or additional volume being submitted. I'm just curious if that's
Yeah, so one of the
forecasted.
focuses that we're gonna ask them to work with us on are food scraps. So we will be looking to tie that, some of those activities to seeing if Dan gets some more food scraps in.
Cool.
Yes. Capital projection. So the capital projects list that is in the packet has been revised. Josh and I looked at that this week. And I referenced that earlier to say some of the projects that have been in progress that are not going forward, like the Milton Drop-Off Center. So that has been removed from the current works in progress and has been moved to out years. So
What is a hook truck?
Josh, can you describe the hook truck?
Sure, so the current truck was a refab from a truck that we had, a dump truck that we had. It turned it into a truck to move food scrap, our food scrap containers from our drop-off center. So the new hook truck will be able to haul those containers in addition to some small open top roll-off containers. So replacing that truck, it needs to be replaced, and increasing our flexibility with this new one.
So this is the reserve fund activity per the $30 ton solid waste management fee. So this is how the reserves would move. So the transfers to the reserves and transfers from the reserves. So all things being equal with the $30, additional money to capital 20,000. That the 500,000 is the anticipated additional revenue based on $30 above what is needed for the administrative programs. Biosolids a little bit extra there, 3.6 into the biosolids reserve, and then that facility closure fund would see another influx of 50,000. Transfer out of reserves, 375 out of operating, 95,000 to the community we would love it to see coming out of the community cleanup fund. And then landfill post closure is 33,000 out for supporting that work on the landfill. With the increase to 40, with the addition to a new MRF project fund, the additional $10 would go to that fund in addition to the solid waste management fee extra in quotations. So there would not be a additional increase into the solid waste management fund. It would go into the new MRF project fund. All else remains equal. And this is a little.
Question on that slide.
Yep, can you go back down?
A transfer into biosolids, thought that was a pass-through program.
We invest some of their funds in treasury bonds as well. So
You did what?
we invest some of their reserve monies as well into the T-bills. So any interest that is a result of their reserve being invested goes directly into that reserve.
It's their money.
It's their money, so we're investing their money on behalf of them. And then this is, and we'll send this to everyone. But that is, so if we're looking at the far right column, that's where we would anticipate ending up at the end of the year with that solid waste management fee at 40. That was it. So that was a lot. Thank you again for driving.
There are questions also.
Yes, so let's go to the questions in.
Before we go to
Chat.
questions, Paul Stabler, as Chair of the Finance Committee, do you want to offer any comments?
Just, we met as Finance Committee as well as a couple other board members in February, had an all-day meeting where we met with the individual department staff members as well as, of course, Sarah. And a lot of good questions asked. And it was clear to me at the time they were very much aware of the the challenge to the budget due to the increased cost of the MRF, and so they had already really looked at cutting back where they could, as Sarah has already described. So I don't know if Leslie or Rick want to add anything to that. Leslie, do you want to add any?
Not at this time.
Okay. And Rick, I don't know if is Rick on?
Shook his head.
Still here.
Okay, all right, so yeah, I believe, it was good, and then we met again last week, I guess it was, to review these final numbers, and had much of the same discussion that we've had here tonight, so, but all good, all good questions and all, so, yes.
I think we can open up for preliminary questions. Rick, your hand is up.
ACR is budgeted at $95. And forgive me if we've discussed this, but I don't recall it. I know that Canada is a major portion of our market for our recyclables. Roughly what percentage of our materials get marketed to Canada, and are they subject to the tariffs? I assume they are. So I'm wondering how much, in general, how much exposure we have based on tariffs that would imperil that $95 number.
Toss that to Jen or to Josh to clarify. Jen?
Yeah, so our largest material that comes out of the market is fiber. And we have many duplicate markets for fiber, both in Canada and the United States. West Rock in the United States, Canada's Kruger Mill. So if the tariffs impact us going to Canada to sell our fiber, we can sell it or Casella can sell it, I should say, in the United States. And they have a pretty good, they have a pretty good influence on getting materials sold. They have several MRFs that they're combining to sell truckloads of materials. So all of our commodities have markets in the United States. We don't rely solely on Canada for any of our commodities.
And some of the good news on and why that's important is as Jen said, the majority of our material that we process is fiber. And over the past decade, there's been significant investment in the United States, particularly in paper mills, boxboard mills, cardboard mills. So we really are in a good position to not have to rely on Canadian markets for any of our materials.
And I would just like to put in a plug for Casella. Over the years, they've always done a good job in marketing these materials. We do not have that expertise in-house, so we really do benefit from that.
Yeah, they are marketing well over 1 million tons a year, so they do have a significant market share, particularly in the Northeast, so they do a very good job at moving our material, absolutely.
We have a requested, board action requested is to approve the budget. I think we're ready for that, and if it's moved and seconded, then we still have an opportunity for more discussion and questions.
So moved, Essex.
Second, South Burlington.
Thank you. It's been moved and seconded that the FY26 budget be approved as presented. Any further discussion? Leslie?
Yeah, based on a lot of the conversation this evening, I'm now concerned, a concern I didn't really focus on during last week's Finance Committee meeting, that we're looking at this budget as a significant source of financing for the MRF project. But we do not have before us a MRF cash flow for MRF development cash flow forecast, monies in, monies out over the next 12 to 18 months. So right now, I'm a little bit, this is sitting on its own, even though conceptually it's linked to the MRF financing. And we don't have that documentation in front of us. So I'm just a little bit uncomfortable right now with approving this budget without that additional information. Because earlier, and I'm sure it was just casual conversation, so I don't want to nail anybody with this, but we're talking about, we had a $3 million unanticipated cost of purchasing a new property, but in fact, the additional cash flow is not 3 million, it's 1.8 or 1.7, 1.8. So where's the difference between those two numbers? And I'm sure it's there, it's accounted for, I just don't have any documentation here to understand it.
We reviewed that question in either February or March. This,
I wasn't here in March.
yeah, it may have,
And I didn't see anything in the minutes, so
well, it's in the packet, so there would have been, the memo in the packet where we talked about the sources of funds. It may have been February. But this calendar year, because that was a question. But what we did not review was the cash needed at different points in the project. So I think that's what you're
what I'm
asking for,
talking
that's what
about.
you're asking for, yeah.
Yeah, that's what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
And particularly now, when we talked about, well, now, I guess there isn't gonna be a 60-day waiting period. I mean, that's the question, when does the $40 per ton kick in now? So, I don't understand that, I'm just not understanding the timing.
July 1,
Okay,
because that's what the language says that was
Okay.
moved.
okay, well, still, I'm just feeling like I don't have a grasp on this.
I guess I'll jump in. I think part of what you were raising, Leslie, is the additional $10 per ton on the solid waste management fee yielding $1.8 million in this budget to go into the MRF construction reserve. Subsequently, in next year, it will be another $1.x million, which would go towards that.
Well, I know,
Delta.
that's why I'm saying that
Yeah.
the timing of these cash flows matter, and I'm not really understanding.
But for the benefit of other boards members who might not have followed it, and I can't follow all of the intricacies either, but there is a time element that we're banking on with the increase in the solid waste management fee in order to address the challenges we have with the MRF,
Yes.
new MRF construction. That's all I want to say without, otherwise I'll get too deep in the
Yes.
weeds without understanding what I'm talking about.
Right, and we can prepare that schedule.
Paul?
I'm sorry, Ken, yes, and then Paul Stabler?
Just regarding Leslie's specific question about the difference. I believe, tell me if I'm wrong, I believe that Sarah told us that there was a grant, a large grant that was going toward that purchase as well. So we don't really need the 3 million from cash flow from the $40. We need less than that. Isn't that true?
So the $1.5 million grant from A&R will be applied to this project. So,
Right.
right, so that kind of halves that 3 million delta, but there's still, to Leslie's point, another 1.5 million on top of the whatever, the other increases that have happened because of the delay, because of just general costs being increased over the past few years. So the delta is still that $3.5–4 million.
Paul Stabler?
I'd just like to point out that yes, the MRF is certainly a significant consideration in this budget, but the majority of this budget regards our ongoing operations that we've had for years and years. So it needs to be set up, and the towns need to approve it so that we can continue operations. And unfortunate timing in that, the design isn't complete. I think you have test pits going on right now.
We do.
Hopefully there are no surprises, but I know I have already requested that when you have more clarity, that you present the kind of the schedule of construction and expenses especially.
Yeah.
And you will work on that as soon as it becomes available. So.
The design is complete, and so we were just out there actually yesterday and saw where the stakes are for the corners of the building. So where it's gonna be is now where it's gonna be. So that part is done. So that means because that is done, they can then get now to the
That's
design
what
sets.
I mean, they have to
Yes, correct.
put the finishing touches before they can really put the schedule out.
Correct.
Further discussion on the motion and the FY26 budget? I think then we're ready to vote on the motion. All those in favor of approving the budget, the FY26 budget as presented tonight, please say aye.
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 Opposed, say nay. Abstentions?
I'm gonna abstain.
Just to be clear, with an abstention, we do not need to have a roll call vote.
You probably should have the roll.
Let's do a roll call vote just to make it.
Clarification, yeah.
Thanks.
Yeah. Okay, let me pull this out. We have Burlington who has left, so we have Charlotte,
Aye.
Colchester,
Yes.
Essex,
Yes.
Essex Junction,
Aye.
Heinsberg,
Aye.
Huntington,
Yes.
Jericho,
Abstain.
Milton is not here, Richmond has left, Shelburne,
Yes.
South Burlington,
Aye.
Underhill,
Aye.
Westford,
Aye.
Williston,
Aye.
Winooski.
Aye.
Motion passes.
Thank you very much. The budget is
Thank you.
approved.
Thank you.
Thank you for all your hard work. Thanks to the Finance Committee, but really kudos to staff for working so hard on this budget.
Yes.
Next item on the agenda is other business. Is there any other business to bring before the Board of Commissioners tonight?
Just would remind folks that you and staff will be going to each town for approval, and
Yes.
I certainly intend to attend the city council meeting when that comes up. Most people probably will, but I'll just remind folks of that. I think it's a good thing to do.
Yes, thank you for the reminder to remind folks about the process. So I now have 45 days to go to our member cities and towns, and Amy is working diligently on setting those schedules up. When your city, and she's been communicating with you, and we've seen a couple of folks saying with their own scheduling conflicts. So when the schedule is out, Amy sends it to all the commissioners, and then absolutely, I would love to see you there. I'm going to look to get to everyone in person this year, where that is welcomed. And so some folks prefer online, but I'd like to just do the in-person thing. And yes, so we will make sure that you know with plenty of advance notice when your date and time will be.
Thank you. Bryn, your hand is up.
Yep, since we're not meeting until next month at this point, just want to put a plug in for Green Up Day, Saturday, May 3rd. Connect with your local town coordinator. That's not you already. You can find that by going to greenupvermont, all spelled out, .org. And you should be able to have all the information on where to pick up bags. If you can't participate day of, feel free to pick up bags early. Those should all be at your town garages or city halls, ready for you to use. So thanks for participating.
Thank you.
Thanks, Bryn.
Thanks.
Lauren and then Rick.
Yeah, along the same lines as Bryn on Green Up Day, I know we have a dumpster in Colchester that folks come and drop things. I also know that there are things not allowed in that dumpster, and it's kind of a wild situation. Can you remind me from a CSWD perspective what you would like to see in and not in that dumpster? Because we can, I'm not gonna enforce it, but I also I'm usually standing there and can guide people.
Yes, let's set up a separate meeting for you and whoever else you want to be there. So because Colchester does something a little different.
Okay.
So let's make sure that you have the support that you need, and Jen will connect some folks from Jen's team with you and get you totally squared away.
Perfect, thank you.
Rick?
Also on the subject of Green Up Day, after about 2 years effort, Heinsberg is finally going to have a dumpster for a tire drop that is being funded out of the community cleanup fund. So especially for you, it's not there yet, but we're close. So especially for new commissioners, you might want to acquaint yourselves with the community cleanup fund, as there are some funds there that are available if you can manage to get the right people doing the right set of things to draw on it. And it's a resource that we've been hard pressed to use, but I think we're gonna get there this year.
I wanted to add, Underhill is also doing a tire roundup as part of Green Up Day, and I was refreshed on the numbers. We did it 5 years ago. Had 3 roll-offs. I think the cost at that time was $3,700. We're expecting it to be a little bit more. But Underhill, for example, has $5,000 in the community cleanup fund. So the money's there, and there's still a little time, maybe, if you could work with your select boards to make that arrangement. Ken?
I'd just like to suggest we have a discussion sometime about the use of community cleanup funds for that specific purpose. It's a little bit, to me, a stretch that people don't want to, that car drivers who buy tires don't want to pay for the disposal of their tires and are asking the rest of the state to subsidize their free tire elimination, whereas a lot of people do pay to drop off their tires at the solid waste district. And I definitely want to keep tires out of the trenches where people roll them if they don't want to pay for it. But we get a lot of clean tires brought to our Green Up Day every year, and it's just cheapskates, and I kind of wonder why the district is paying for that.
You need
So
to
it's-
be for tires.
There's a bill.
Is there another one? Okay,
Yeah.
because it came up a while back,
Yeah,
but didn't pass,
There's a
right?
bill this year for EPR for tires.
Oh, good, excellent.
Just a discussion sometime. I know this is not the time, but Paul suggested it a long time ago, and it's not a no-brainer to me, so, but I understand it.
Okay, I think that's a great idea, and some of these conversations are really great for the annual organizational meeting, because that's when we tend to get some new commissioners. So it's a good introduction to the Community Cleanup Fund, and we can have some conversations about what it's been used for in the past and different ideas, and so we can add that potentially to that agenda for June.
Any other business?
Move we adjourn.
One second. Just keep in mind, if you're using the cleanup funds, finance usually needs your request for reimbursement by early June.
Yes, and it must be approved by your commissioner.
Yes.
Read the community cleanup fund guidelines or email me. 'Cause I'm doing
We're happy to help.
many years of the community cleanup fund.
So I
Excellent
think
reminders, thank you.
it's been moved
Second, Seth Burlington.
to adjourn. All those in favor, please say aye.
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 Good evening, everybody. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.